Good evening, everyone. And over the last year, we've been hearing certain words over and over again, like coronavirus, COVID-19, lockdown, second wave, Zoom, Donald Trump, and of course, COVID-19 vaccines. Many people have had COVID-19 and recovered completely with no problems, but some unfortunately have lost their lives. So today, let's take a few seconds of silence to pray for all those that have departed during these difficult times, and for us to have a successful meeting today. My name is Dr. Saidia Gumi. I'm a pediatric consultant. COVID Nigerian Medics is a group of doctors and other healthcare professionals in the diaspora and locally coming together to exchange ideas that would help in building our healthcare system in Nigeria. This is one of our monthly webinars, and we are going to be discussing COVID-19 vaccines and the implications for Nigeria. We have a panel of distinguished guests from different fields of expertise to help us get to grips with this important topic. I am sure we will be wiser and be able to take more informed decisions at the end of this webinar. I would like to introduce today's moderator. She is a friend, she's a sister and a colleague. So she had her first degree in physiology and pharmacology and before becoming a pediatrician. She is also a health and life coach. Please, let's welcome Dr. Hadiza Bawa-Garba, who would be moderating for us today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Sadia. And thank you everybody for actually giving up your Saturday evening and joining us. Thank you so much. Like Dr. Sadia said, we have actually lost close to 2 million people to the virus. So this is a serious topic, and I agree with you. Our dear country has a lot of other challenges that we should also be talking about and trying to find solutions. Thank you for coming here, and we have a beautiful panel today. What I'll do is I'll introduce you to the panel, and when I do so, they will wave so that you can see who I'm talking about. I'll start with Dr. Murtala. He is a medical doctor, and he's currently working as a professor in pharmacology, as a lecturer in pharmacology and therapeutics at Bayero University, Kano. He did his PhD in immunology and vaccine development at the University of Manchester. And he's also a public health response officer for COVID-19 in Jigawa State. Dr. Murtala, welcome. Okay. And then next we have Professor Simon Aguale. He's the President CEO of Innovative Biotech Nigeria and USA. He's the chair of Africa COVID-19 Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, the chair of Vaccine Production Subgroup ECOWAS, and sits on the expert committee on access and local production of COVID-19 and other vaccines in West Africa. Welcome, Professor Aguale. Thank you. And then we also have a perspective from our religious leaders so that they can tell us what we need to do. And so we have Pastor Abiodun Famojuro, who is a lawyer, a preacher, a public speaker, an event manager, and a media consultant. We're expecting our politicians, so I'll just confirm from Dr. Gumi if they're here. And we're also expecting our Ustaz from the Islamic perspective to give us a viewpoint, and Professor Olayinka. Sorry, sir. So
Catholic is here.
Fantastic. So it looks like you're all here. Okay, so let me start with Professor Olayinka. So Professor Adebola Olayinka is a clinical microbiologist. She has an interest in infectious hazard management and research on highly pathogenic agents. She's also a technical advisor to the NCDC. And then we have Honorable Shehu Kakale, who is a current basically representative of the federal lawmaker, and he's representing the Shuni part of Sokoto State. So he's an honorable member with the current regime. So Ustaz Abdul Jabir Abdullah Musa is an lecturer from Bayes University, Abuja. He's also a marriage counselor, partner for Diamond for Architects, and also the founder of the Darul Tawheed Islamic Center.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we know our panel. Please, can I ask for everybody to mute their microphones? And we will start with Dr. Murtala Jibril. And your question, doctor, is why do we need vaccines anyway? Because what we want to do is we want to take you, our audience, on a journey. We want to take you on a journey of why are vaccines important? What is COVID vaccine? What happens if we don't vaccinate ourselves? And then what are the implications from a political point of view, a religious point of view, and why can't we make our own vaccine? We have people that are vaccine producers. Why can't Africa make its own vaccine? So that's the journey we want to take you on. So if I start with Dr. Murtala, please can you answer the question, why we need to vaccinate, and basically what the COVID vaccine is and why we need to do the social distancing. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and nice to have you for this discussion. A vaccine essentially is a chemical we introduce into our body to teach the body how to fight pathogens. These pathogens are what causes the disease, and basically we inject either the whole of that pathogen, either as killed or as life attenuated, or we administer what we term as an antigen or a structural protein, which is a component of the pathogens that we are trying to prevent from attacking our body. Now, there are a number of classes of these vaccines, which include, as I mentioned, the life attenuated, which include vaccines for chickenpox, measles, mumps, and rubella. We also have inactivated or dead vaccines, in which the pathogen is killed and it doesn't cause any harm to our body, but because it have all the antigenic determinants of the actual pathogens, our immune system will recognize it and develop immune memory, so that during next encounter, our body will be able to address and attack that disease with greater effect. Apart from the whole pathogen vaccines, which essentially contain the whole pathogens as killed or as life attenuated, we have what is termed as subunit vaccine. In subunit vaccine, as I mentioned earlier, is an antigen that is derived from that particular pathogens that we introduce into the body and try to generate immune response, so that antibodies are generated that ultimately during the next encounter would be able to attack that particular antigen and thereby rendering the pathogens unable to cause disease. These subunit vaccines tend to be a lot safer than the whole pathogen vaccine, because with the whole pathogen vaccine, like the life attenuated, at times you have what we call as reversion to incomplete reversion to life, or you could have incomplete activation with the inactivated vaccines, and you end up having a disease that you are trying to prevent. But with subunit vaccines, which either contains the integral component, which could be a polysaccharide or a peptide derived from that particular pathogens, is introduced into the body, stimulate the immune cells, thereby generate memory cells, so that our body will be able to recognize and attack that particular pathogen during the subsequent encounter. Now, with the subunit vaccine, we have polysaccharide vaccines, which example, we have the meningococcal, and subsequently we have the conjugated vaccines, in which some of these polysaccharides are conjugated with a peptide carrier to enhance generation of memory cells. And we have virus-like particles, in which a structural protein of a virus like hepatitis B co-antigen is genetically expressed as a particle. It looks like the actual virus, but it doesn't contain the genetic component. Therefore, it is ineffective. It is unable to cause harm. Uh, we also have now, recently, we have the RNA and the DNA vaccine. With the RNA vaccine, essentially, you are introducing an RNA. Now, because an RNA is short-lived and it's easily destroyed by our body, it is sort of contained in a nanoparticle so that it stays for a certain period of time in our body up to the time that the immune response is generated. And this RNA, which is termed as messenger RNA, usually originated from the nucleus of the cell. So it originates from the nucleus, then it translocated into the cytoplasm, where it is translated into an antigen. So we get the genetic codon of the particular antigen that we are trying to generate immunity against, and surround it with a nanoparticle, introduce it into the body, thereby directing our body's immune mechanism or cellular machinery to translate that genetic information into an antigen. And then our body will now produce antibodies and the memory cells against that particular antigen, which is what is happening with the COVID vaccine. We introduce the RNA, and the RNAs get into our cells. Our cell, particularly dendritic cells, will now translate that particular RNA into the antigen, which is the spike protein that we are trying to attack.
Thank you, Dr. Murtala. So basically, in lay terms, I mean, this was very, very, very good. And but I think because there was a lot of doctor language, I think in just lay terms is that you feel that the mRNA vaccine, that the vaccination, the COVID-19, which is what we are interested in, when we have it, it will help us to make antibodies if we're exposed to COVID. Yeah, because then that way the COVID virus will not attack our body in a bad way because our body has seen it before. Yeah, so that's why it's important. That's where that's why vaccines are important. Yeah, and I'm very grateful for that explanation that you've given. And this is just a watered down version for those that are not medical. Yeah.
Hello?
So what we're going to do as part of the storytelling is I'm actually going to invite Professor Olayinka just to tell us the story about how bad is the problem in Nigeria. This COVID-19 that we're all talking about, and there's a lot of news about it, the social distance, the hand washing, can you, from your capacity, tell us how bad the problem is in Nigeria, Professor Olayinka?
Good evening, everyone. And I believe a lot of us have been following the news in Nigeria. You know that we have over 100,000. We've had a cumulative number of over 100,000 cases, and we've lost 1,400 people. Okay, so I think what I'd like to say is that when we talk about these numbers are those that have been reported to the health authorities. So it doesn't really give us the actual picture. And that's because a number of people are not testing even when they have the symptoms. And then a number of people are doing self-medication. But from what has been reported to the National Health Authorities, we have this number, 107,000 and more have been reported infected since February 27th when we had the first case. And then we've had more than 1,400 that have died. Now, there have been so many things said about why the disease is increasing and why we're experiencing the second wave. People have tried to ask, are we having a new variant? People are asking, why are we having this second wave? We don't have the evidence yet whether the second wave is due to a new variant or not. But one of the things that is very obvious, and I'm sure all of us that are on this call, we can relate with that, is the fact that majority of Nigerians are not, permit me to use the word, acting responsibly. And what do I mean by acting responsibly? Responsible behavior is doing what you need to do to protect not just yourself, but to protect the people that are vulnerable in the society. So yes, all of us are susceptible to COVID, but some people are more vulnerable than others. And what do I mean by being more vulnerable? Those who are vulnerable are those who are likely to die when they contract the infection. You know, people normally say, oh, but it's just 1,400 that have died. Those are not numbers. Those are human beings. Those are people's parents, people's children, people's relatives. So even if people feel that, oh, okay, if I just live my life, nothing is happening to me, it's responsible behavior to protect the next person. So one of the drivers of the infection in the society is the fact that majority of Nigerians are not doing just the simple prevention measures that we can put in place to reduce this transmission. And except we begin to do that, we are likely even going to still have increasing cases. Overnight, we had more than 1,800 cases in less than 24 hours. And that is not all the cases. Like I said, those are the cases that are reported. Now, how does this come to bear when you're talking about the need for vaccine? From what we know about the vaccine and what is coming to Nigeria in the next few months, we already know that it's not even going to reach like a quarter of our population. So that still means that we all need to keep acting.
Yo, can you hear me?
Because that's what would help us.
Yo, can you hear me?
Who was it?
Can I just say
Okay.
that, Professor, please, you know the point that you just made about us acting responsible. I think this was a very good example of the irresponsible behavior. So if you can, maybe you can start from that point about the ability to act responsibly.
No, I couldn't see. I've reported.
You can make your last point as well. Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience.
Okay, so well, I talked about acting responsibly so that we protect those who are vulnerable amongst us. And then I also said, even though there's a lot of hype about the vaccine, you know, I hear a lot of things, and I tell people that it's going to take some time for the vaccine to get to the 200 million Nigerians or more that we have. So we still have to continue with these prevention measures in the meantime. And even for those who take the vaccine, you will still need to continue with the prevention measures, irrespective of the vaccine. So the bid to get a vaccine is not going to stop us from acting responsibly. We all still need to continue to act responsibly so that we protect not just ourselves, but we also protect people around us. So I'll stop here. Thanks, and over.
Fantastic. It was excellent. We all need to act responsible. It's everybody's responsibility to protect the vulnerable in our society. That's those that are over 70, who, if they get the virus, it will really affect them. It can kill them. So it's our responsibility to do that. So now I'm going to invite Professor Aguale to answer the question, why can't Africa make its own vaccine? What are the challenges for Africa and Nigeria in making the vaccine? Because for how long will Africa be waiting for people to bring things to us when I believe that, you know, we're in a good position to help ourselves? So Professor Aguale, please.
Well, good question. First of all, we have to look at how vaccines are made. Making vaccine is not rocket science. The first thing that we try to do is to understand natural protection. And like the previous speaker said, how is the infection in the case of COVID initiated? So we know that the spike protein of the virus binds to the host cell, which is the AC2 receptor, and then the virus enters the cell. So the question is, how do we prevent it? So you have to make a vaccine that will make antibody against that spike protein to prevent that binding from happening. So that's how COVID vaccine is developed. That's why all the COVID vaccine candidates that we have are targeting the spike protein. So again, once that is done, you have to test it in animal model first, at least 2 animal model, small animal model, and then non-human primates like chimpanzees and monkeys and so on, to look for safety and then immunogenicity and effectiveness in some cases where the monkeys are challenged. So once you do that, if the result is positive, then you have to move to the next phase, which is the human trial. So you submit that data to the regulatory authorities. Here in the US, you submit to FDA. If you are in Nigeria, you submit to NAFDAC and so on. So they give you approval to do human trials. So safety is critical in any vaccine development. So the different platforms that we have are different ways to present that spike protein, because we know when you make antibodies or other immune responses to the spike protein, you protect against the disease. So how do we present the spike protein? That's why you have RNA-based vaccines. Some people are using RNA-based vaccines. Some people are using vector-based, like the AstraZeneca using chimpanzee adenovirus, which is the co-virus in chimpanzees. Johnson & Johnson is using human adenovirus. The Chinese, India are using inactivated virus and so. So these are all different platforms to present that spike protein. So once that is done, you have that data, you move to human trials. You can't move to human trials without obtaining that approval from the regulatory authority. It is important to know that, because there are a lot of people say, oh, the vaccine is not safe and all of that. This is the standard practice. It takes 10 years to make a vaccine. So once you get that, you get approval from the regulatory authority. You now do phase 1 to see whether the safety that you got in human trials will be replicated in humans. That's why you limit it to few individuals, 10, 20 to 100 people, to check the safety of the vaccine in humans. And then once it is safe in phase 1, you move to phase 2, you increase that, you now start checking the dosages and the immune response and so on. So once it's okay, then you can now move to phase 3 trials to look at whether the immune responses generated by vaccines will protect against the infection. And that is where you recruit thousands of people. I mean, see some of the phase 3 trials recruit about 30,000 people, 40,000 people, and all of that. So once that is done, the way this trial is designed is in such a way that the manufacturer of vaccine has no say as far as the data is concerned. That's why you have the Data Safety and Management Board, which is independent, over 20 people from the various backgrounds, to look at the data to make sure that the vaccine is safe and is efficacious. And once you generate that data will be submitted to the regulator. Okay. So emergency use authorization. So once you get that approval, then the vaccine can now be licensed for use. And then you now build your factory to produce the vaccine. That's the traditional method, which takes about 10 years. So with the COVID, this process is not compromised, but it is shortened because of the emergency. You have to repeat the entire process without the compromise to the integrity of the trials. So what it means is that there's a lot of funds from government put into this. While you are doing your phase 1, phase 2 trials, you start manufacturing the vaccine. So you are taking a risk. No company wants to take that. That's why the government pay for that. So you start stockpiling the vaccine so that before you know whether the vaccine will work or not. so that when you know the vaccine works, then you have doses that you can now start giving people. That's why this COVID vaccine was developed within 1 year. People think the scientific integrity or cooperation. No, the same process was taken, but because we use platforms that have been used in other vaccines, and then there was a lot of funding from government to take care of the risk that normally companies would not want to take. So coming to Africa, this is what we are pushing, because right now, as you can see, WHO has approved only one vaccine, which is the Pfizer vaccine. The initial 2 billion doses to 3 billion doses have been bought already by wealthy countries. So where are you going to get the vaccine from? So the key question now is, how do we build our own capacity to produce this? It's not rocket science. All we need is government intervention, bringing the necessary resources. We have the scientists in Africa. We have an association, African Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, that can make this thing happen, so that we'll produce vaccines for Africa. If we want to wait for getting these products, we are talking this thing, it comes to reality, we are saying you're going to get 10 million doses before March. Where are you going to get a vaccine from? Like 33 billion doses of the vaccine have already been bought. This is what WHO has approved. If you look at the other vaccines that are coming, like if you are depending on the Chinese vaccine, if you have been following the news, you see that the efficacy of the vaccine done in Brazil was 50%. So you now have a vaccine that efficacy is 95%, and then you have a vaccine that is 50%. Who is going to take that? So these are questions that need to be answered. And I think that we need to wake up as Africa and Nigeria to see how we can get this thing done. We can build this facility. It's not rocket science. You know, all we need to do is to assemble the best brains and then make this thing happen within the shortest possible time. That does not mean that we shouldn't assess this vaccine, because, I mean, you have short time. It takes time to build the factories. So we have short time. In the short time, we have to assess, partner with various companies to make sure that we get these vaccines to take care of this while we are building our capacity. It would be stupid for us to spend hundreds of billions to just import vaccines without a strategy to build a vaccine factory locally.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was heard loud and clear. So the two important points you made is that Africa can make its own vaccine. That's amazing. So we have the potential to make it. And number two, we need to know that there's differences in efficacy of the vaccines. So the one in Brazil is only 50%, and then the other one is 95%. So we need to get the best products for our people, and we're quite capable of doing that. So that will now take me to our policymakers. I believe that we have a representative, House of Rep, and that there's a significant amount of money that Nigeria has kept for the vaccine. So I want to invite Honorable Shehu Kakali to just give us his perspective about the significant amount of money that the vaccine, that the government has put for the vaccine. But before, Honorable, you answer, I just wanted to add that this forum is about solutions. So we know that there are lots of problems with our dear country and lots of challenges. So what we want to focus on is, what are the solutions? What is your perception? So I'm going to invite you to tell me your perception, then I'll invite the senator if he's here, and also Professor Olayinka. So I'll start with Honorable Kakali.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Hadiz Abawa, for giving me the opportunity. I have heard the contribution of first two speakers, and I really commended their own contributions and their perspective about the vaccines. I'm a member of the Health Committee in the House of Representatives, and also a member of the Ad hoc Committee on COVID-19 in the House of Representatives. That's the Ninth Assembly. Before I go further, I want to disagree with the last but one speaker, that's Professor Athimbiodo, that said there is a component of responsibility that brought in the second wave. Not necessarily so, because there are a lot of moving parts. We are having second waves in Europe, in America, in Asia, and wherever, where they have the most stringent application of their laws in lockdowns, but they still came down with a second wave. So it's not about only about citizen responsibility or those who do not believe in COVID that causes the spread. There are other factors. There is citizen fatigue. There's the new variant. There is the natural history, epidemiological history of infectious diseases. They usually run into second ones or sometimes third waves. On the side of policy, at the National Assembly, we have been doing a lot, and we're still doing a lot in trying to improve and promote local content. The federal government of Nigeria, currently, I know, have had a lot of major policies that promote innovations and creativity in the local sector in science and technology and manufacturing. By way of the multiple bills, new bills, some of them brought up, some amended. I'm talking about, for example, the recently signed finance bill, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Companies on Allied Matter Act, and even the executive orders, brought in by the president, Executive Order 1, 2, and 5. All of them are talking about local content. And in the National Assembly, when the COVID-19 issue came up, we quickly assembled the economic stimulus bill and a dozen resolutions and other proposals about how we can prop up, local content and our own human capacity in developing vaccines. Let me say it here for the record. I'm going to debate against bringing in any vaccine into Nigeria for COVID. We have to do our own here. Let's also take 1 year to produce our own vaccines. We have around 68 institutions of research in Nigeria, universities, and we have the personnel, the professors, laboratory scientists. We have doctors, we have nurses, we have cutting-edge scientists in this country. They can produce a vaccine. We were producing vaccines before. From the estimates, we might be spending around 500 billion. I won't be party to that. 500 billion, just take 100 billion, we will produce our own vaccine. Just like, of course, what the last speaker said, it's not rocket science. Nigeria can lead an African vaccine alliance. That we can, develop our own vaccines, even tapping into our own traditional, traditional institutions. We have massive amount of flora that are highly efficacious, that have active ingredients in prevention and treatment of COVID symptoms, and even the vaccine itself. We fought polio in this country and Ebola, and we have the community infrastructure to get it down. But with the current level of vaccine apathy and skepticism amongst Nigerians and the communities that I have visited in my constituency and other constituents, and the venom about vaccines on social media, I'm telling you, I'm not sure Nigeria is going to, people are going to accept that vaccines. Bringing in vaccines was 500 billion naira. That's an estimate that's going to be brought to the National Assembly. We are not going to take it. Let me tell you, it's going to be very, very expensive for Nigeria, costly, for not in monetary terms. Not in monetary terms. It's going to be very costly for Nigeria in moral terms, in our economic sustainability plan terms, and in the terms of lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in this decade, which is the plan, the mega plan of this government. We can create jobs, small and medium businesses that can be into medical manufacturing. And then our universities and our research centers will go further with pharmaceutical systems to really expand and develop human capacity, and we'll be exporter of vaccines and other products. In Nigeria, we have this problem this syndrome, SOP, solve our problem syndrome. And our generation and the next one, we're not going to bequeath this to Nigerian citizens. We should solve our own problems ourselves. At policy making, I'm telling you, we'll continue to push NAFDAC, National Institute of Medical Research, National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, all our research agencies and departments and universities and institutes. Give them the mandate, give them the money. Let's have a vaccine, then we'll produce it. The estimates are we have to inoculate around 60% of the population. 200 million, that would be around 120 million. In 2 doses, that would be 240 million doses. Where will we get the doses even? Which means Nigeria is going to inoculate more people than the entire of what we have in most European countries. And vaccine ranges from $5 per shot to as high as 20, according to some companies. So you're talking about over half a billion, half a trillion naira, over $1 billion. And then you have not even captured in the vaccine logistics, cold chain logistics, the transport, the waste management, the training. So we are going to spend trillions on vaccines that we can produce in Nigeria? No. When it comes to the National Assembly, we're going to debate it. I'm going to debate against it. We should produce our own vaccine in 1 year or less. And in special circumstances, we might have a bit of the already formed vaccine in terms of international and bilateral cooperations. Yes, we are working with WHO, but we should have our own vaccines. And we should have a lot of traditional institutions and traditional components of supplemental and supportive remedies that we have in the treatment of flu and other. And finally, there are other viruses out there that kill more people than COVID. When I talk about viruses, I'm talking about health emergencies that we have: road traffic accidents, maternal mortality, malaria, meningitis, Lassa fever. They are deadlier than COVID. An average of 1 person dies every 6 minutes on road traffic accidents in Nigeria.
Yes.
An average 1 woman will lose in labor rooms or across homes in childbirth that is preventable in this country.
That's very true. I completely agree with you, Honorable. Because of time, I have to move to the next panel speaker, but I have to say you were very passionate. Thank you so much. You're right, it's going to be cheaper, not just monetary wise, but morally wise, because there's lots of skepticism amongst people about what is contained in the vaccine. So we heard you loud and clear, and I learned something. You said SOP, solve our own problems. So thank you for sharing that. And I agree with you. We have a lot of other problems: maternal mortality, poverty, but we have to start somewhere. So thank you for your thoughts. Now, I think it's a good time to ask Professor Olayinka about her thoughts about the money that the government has budgeted for this vaccine. Before I move,
not budgeted money yet.
Sorry?
Government has not budgeted money yet.
I'm sorry. Of course, you're very current. The money that we will have to
2021 budget yet for COVID.
Yes. Okay, so the money that we will have to budget if we were to vaccinate in Nigeria. So thank you for that correction, Honorable. But like you said, it's going to be a significant amount of money. Professor, please, can you answer that question from your perspective? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. From my perspective, I think there needs to be much more cost-benefit analysis about the vaccines. Without a doubt, vaccines are protective. I mean, they are the best protection for infectious diseases if they are found to be effective. But in the context of Nigeria, it's important we do a cost-benefit analysis. And what do I mean by that? We already have an idea of how much it's going to cost us to get vaccines for just 50,000 Nigerians. And if you look at 50,000 Nigerians out of 200,000, that's less than 0.5% of Nigerians. So how would that really benefit us as Nigerians? Because even when we are talking about vaccine, one of the reasons why we do vaccination is because we want to, at the end of the day, create a kind of herd immunity. And before we are going to get any adequate herd immunity, we need to be talking about vaccinating close to 90,000 Nigerians, and that's a very long way to go. And then we could actually, in doing the cost-benefit analysis also, we really want to find out, so how would that, if 50,000 people are vaccinated, how does it take care of the more than 190 million people? And even though the Honorable said he did not agree with me about irresponsible behavior, I still stand on it. That we are going to need to focus on that. I've traveled from the far north, from Kebbi State to River State. I did that during this pandemic. And I saw people. I traveled by road because then the airports were closed. And I moved across villages, I moved across towns. The truth is, people were not adhering to the non-pharmaceutical interventions. So you cannot say that those were not, the non-adherence is not a driver of the infection. There are proven public health methods of dealing with infectious diseases. And as simple as they have been proven to be effective. When we talk about tuberculosis, the aspect of hygiene comes into place, the aspect of ventilation, cross-ventilation. You know, those are basic things. When you talk about cholera, the basic thing of, you know, safe potable water, hand hygiene are things that are proven public health prevention measures. And as bad as this COVID seems to be, yes, it spreads efficiently, but if every single person does what they're going to do, the reason why I believe we're having this pandemic, and it's not limited to Nigeria, is because every single person is not adhering to these basic non-pharmaceutical interventions. Some adhere, some don't adhere. Even the people that adhere, they don't adhere completely. When you tell people to use masks, you find out it's under their chin. You find out that it covers the mouth, the nose is exposed. I traveled yesterday from Lagos to Abuja, and I was in the plane. And you won't believe it that the man who sat next to me, suddenly he pulled down his mask to cough. I had to shout on him. And I'm like, oh, that you do not pull down your mask when you cough into your mask. So the man could tell you, oh, yes, I'm wearing a mask, but he's not doing exactly what needs to be done. And I believe that that behavior is actually part of what fuels the transmission of infection. It's not the only thing, of course. We have multifaceted factors. But people not adhering and not behaving responsibly, it's a major driver.
Pastor Abiodun, thank you for all our religious leaders. Thank you for waiting patiently, you know, because I know that you will be the most patient amongst us, having been, you know, representing us. So that's why I want to hear from you, Pastor Abiodun. How should a Christian how should their response as Christians be in a pandemic? And what do you think is the feeling? I know that you might not necessarily speak for all Christians, but what do you feel, you know, as a pastor, should be the attitude of people towards the COVID vaccination? So I suppose there's two questions. One, what the response should be in a pandemic, and two, how the feeling is towards the vaccination. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adiza Bawa. I'm very grateful. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Concerning the body of Christ, like you rightly said, I can't speak for all Christians, but I have to say that I have enjoyed the discourse so far. Honorable Shehu, I am tremendously blessed. Professor Olayinka, thank you so much. Now, I need to say something very important, and this is for the benefit of everybody watching us wherever we are in the world. There is a global mistrust within Nigeria and the vaccination community. There's a global distrust. That level of distrust is responsible for the reaction that people are getting. Example, people are going into markets, people are buying and selling, and religious places of worship were shut down. Now that is a challenge. If a monitoring team or an enforcement team says, we want to go to all the religious houses to see the level of compliance, then there would have been an harmonious interaction or an increased level of communication. In the age where we are, information is readily accessible, albeit some of those informations are manipulated. In the age of social media, there's fake news, there's deep fake. So what happens is someone creates a story that is not true and then pushes it out, and very few people verify. Listen, assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. Everyone wants to be informed. They need to hear the truth. The balance between the conversation between Honorable Shehu and Professor Olayinka, the question about were we responsible, did we not act responsibly? The reality is this. A lot of Nigerians, we are very spiritual people. We take our religion serious and our element of worship serious. So when you say, oh, you would die, someone says, no, I will not die in Jesus' name. I come against that. I don't receive that. I reject that. Now, if you give them sufficient information to say, look, your level of hygiene must be up to scratch. You must protect yourself. Yes, you do not want to die. Yes, you believe you will not die, but you will not be, look, a man says, I am not going to die. He doesn't pour petrol on himself and then lights a cigarette and says, oh, I will not die. So because I will not die or I cannot die, and then he sets himself ablaze. It is wrong. A lot of things, look, with the vaccine, we're talking solutions. I love what Honorable Shehu said. The level of distrust with the global vaccination is high in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians have said to themselves, it's my fundamental right. So talking about me compulsorily being vaccinated raises a red flag. And so when we're talking about solving our own problems, Nigerians need to hear, there must be an engagement from the PTF, the National Assembly, to the religious leaders, Christians, Muslims, engage them, call a town hall meeting, discuss with them, because the level of followership we command is significant. Every Nigerian falls under either a Christian, a Muslim, an agnostic. There is someone we are listening to. So if you're not talking to the influencers, I'm talking about the religious influencers, those who command the following, who are you talking to? Because there's a level of trust in that system, in that ecosystem, the religious ecosystem. So for us to be able to surge, push forward, Pfizer has, unfortunately, a reputation in Nigeria. We know what happened in Kano. And so some people have not forgotten what happened in Kano. Yes, we might want to say, let's not go to the past. The vaccines developed in Europe. Was it developed in Europe for Africans? Somebody, Professor Aguale spoke about and then the first lecturer, first professor, I think, spoke about the mRNA. In my preparation for this meeting, I went online, I did personal research. The feedback about the mRNA is not fantastic. Now, some of them might be questionable, some of them might not be true, but the question is this: is it possible for us to develop a vaccine in Nigeria to take care of Nigerians? Yes. Are we going to have capital flights with 500 billion naira or, for, yes, there will be capital flight. Some persons will just say, you know what, they've started again. Let's raise up our hands and put up our legs. Nigeria, some people are about to make money on the vaccine issue. And so these are conversations, and I'm very happy with the conversation we're having here. We need to, the level of distrust, we must break down the wall. The level of communication, like what we're having right now, the level of engagement must be serious. The religious leaders must be carried along. You must speak to them. Don't treat them as, they're not at war with anybody or in hostile competition. And so the people that I pastor a church where a lot of my members are medical professionals. So I understand perfectly what is going on with the COVID. I had a close family friend get infected, so I can relate. It is real. And another thing, let me quickly say this because I need to allow other people to talk. When you treat in a pandemic with a level of suspicion, it increases doubt. Somebody says, oh, somebody got COVID. Who? Well, I don't know. I just know somebody. No. Now, in the second wave, we're having names and faces. People are coming out to say, I was infected. I was infected. It wasn't like that before. So we need to address this squarely. And I firmly believe that with a partnership that works, we will make great strides. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pastor. And I agree with you. We have not forgotten about what happened in Kano, and it's the same Pfizer that are trying to get us the vaccines. So it's not like we are living in the past. No, these are scars that will remain with us, but we need to move forward. Yeah. So COVID is real. And you're right, we must take the religious leaders with us. Thank you so much, Pastor. I'm now going to invite Ustaz Abu Jaber Abdullah to give us his view from the Muslim perspective. What should a Muslim do in a pandemic? And what is the perception and feelings amongst the Muslim community? Thank you, Ustaz.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a very interesting night. I've had a lot of things, and the professors that spoke so well. The honorable member gave us a very fantastic policy view to the issue, and what my pastor said now, it's very interesting. Now, what I would just say in a very brief way is that as Muslims, I think it was something that ignited the adherence to the teachings of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when the issue of COVID came in, because we have a known principle in the Sharia from the Prophet that if there is, if you get a wind of an outbreak of a plague in a land, do not enter it. And if it breaks out in a land in which you are in, do not leave it. So this forms the basics upon which the Muslims reacted to this vaccine. And that was why there was a general acceptance when the government said people should not go to the mosques. But again, with the issue of vaccine, well, before I go into that, generally, we as Muslims, we believe that vaccination is something that is jaiz, something that is permissible. So there is nothing wrong in having it as long as it is something that has been proven to be, legitimate without causing further harm. As the pastor rightly said, a lot of suspicion around the vaccine itself is what is causing a lot of troubles around. And when you try to convince people, they always bring this issue of we don't trust the people that are bringing this vaccine. We don't know they're trying to attack us. A lot of conspiracy theories, and we don't have people verifying whether these conspiracy theories are right or wrong. So I think generally as Muslims, it is pertinent for the world to understand that Islamically, vaccination, prevention, prevention is better than cure. So we have instances in the practice of the Prophet ﷺ where preventive measures were taken to prevent the occurrence of certain things, and which gives us the legitimacy to go for vaccination. Now, the problem now is where there is suspicion and you don't even know what's going on. And that is where the issue of us developing our own vaccine is very important. And generally, it's very important that the religious leaders are carried along when they're discussing these issues, because at local level, a lot of people have confidence in them. Whatever they tell their followers that, okay, this is right, and they can be able to prove it from religious point of view, they go a long way in convincing the masses than even the government. Sometimes the government has to use force, but it takes a religious leader that has that confidence of his people to tell them to go to this particular direction, and they go there. And for us, I think there are a lot of evidences in the Sharia to support the use of vaccination. But the big question now that I think even amongst the Muslim communities here in Nigeria, the question is, why should someone insist on us taking the vaccination? Because generally, it's something that is permissible, not an obligation. So for something that is permissible, yes, you have the choice of doing it or not. But again, that takes us to another technical issue, which the Muslim leaders will use in convincing people, should people be asked to take vaccination when they arrive in Nigeria, is the issue of, yes, it is not compulsory for you to take vaccination, for example, because you can decide not to take any medication even if you are sick, you trust in Allah, you have people of that level, and you are not sinning by doing that. But the question now is, la darara wa la dirar. The principle is, there should be neither harm nor reciprocating harm. So in a case of pandemic where you transmit it, then the religious leaders also have the responsibility now to convince the people that, yes, you can decide not to take it, but remember, the public health is of paramount importance. That is where you come in now. You need to take it, for example, in order to prevent. But mind you, all of these questions are surrounding the legitimacy of these vaccines that are coming from outside Nigeria that need to be addressed, and people need to be convinced before they can be able to even make the choice of taking the vaccination. So I think generally it is very important for us to know that. And again, one of the most important things that we need here is the issue of sensitization. There is no way you're going to convince people on the benefits of a vaccine or the harms of not taking a vaccine without sensitizing them adequately using the best methodology that you could employ in convincing them. Because in Islam, you put the overall benefits. And one of the arguments that some scholars use against vaccination is the issue of, you're introducing, I don't know the right terminology, is it an antigen? You're introducing an antigen to the body. I don't know, the doctors are here. Then for the body to develop an antibody against that, so that in future or something, but they see it as you're introducing a harm into the body, and wala tulqu bi aydikum ila tahluka, do not use your hands to take yourself into destruction. So some see it, while some scholars, in trying to prove a case for vaccine, is that, okay, even when it is known that there are side effects when you take certain vaccines, but it is certain that this vaccination works, then the scholars said it is for the Muslims to look at it from this perspective of going with the two of the lesser evils. Yes, Sheikh bin Baz, rahmatullah alayhi, said it's like the case of circumcision. When you circumcise a child from a religious point of view, because of purity that it's expected of us before we perform some acts of ibadah. So circumcision, he said, when you circumcise your child, the child goes through a lot of pains, but you just can't help but look at the child going through that excruciating pain, but the overall benefit after the pain is gone is what you look at. So even when there are side effects, non-side effects that are not detrimental, because again, in the Sharia, one of the things that we need to convince the people is that you cannot take a harm by something that is more harmful than it. So if the side effects of the vaccine are more harmful than the coronavirus itself, then we tell the Muslims, don't go for it. And we're not going to go back against that. We tell the Muslims, don't go for it. But if the non-side effects are not as detrimental as the main virus that you're trying to prevent, then you go for it, because of the example that was given brilliantly so by Sheikh bin Baz. So I think these are some of the things that we need, because we need a lot of sensitization, a lot of convincing, and we need to clear a lot of doubts before the majority of the Muslim community can accept something like this. As you have said, the issue of Pfizer is not far-fetched. So this mutual suspicion is rife amongst the Muslim communities here, and legitimately so. So I think, they look at the utterances of some of the people that are championing this vaccine production, and they see the utterances as, anti-Black or anti-Africa. So this, unfortunately, has contributed to the mutual suspicion. So I think it is established that vaccination is permissible Islamically. It's not something that is haram. But what we need to do is, I think it will save us a lot of stress if we can concentrate 500 billion naira, use the money in encouraging our experts to develop our own vaccine. And when our people know that this vaccine has been developed in our country, it has gone through all the clinical stages, then I think we'll have more confidence in even convincing people, and we'll have more strength in convincing people to go for these vaccines. And we don't know what to believe in. Every day you get news. I was just reading earlier about I've forgotten the country now, that 10 people died yesterday after having their first dosage. So these are some of the things that are creating some of this mutual suspicion amongst the Muslim communities here. But I think with sensitization, and then with transparency and sincerity, we can go a long way in convincing people to take this, at least so that we will prevent the spread of this disease. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ustaz. That was really informative. Thank you for giving us the both views. You actually led us nicely into the second part of this seminar, this webinar, which will be looking at the side effects and some of the controversial theories. We're going to ask our experts in vaccine development, Professor Aguale, about his views about all these conspiracies that are going on. We have Dr. Raji Tajuddin. He's a medical doctor who specializes in pediatrics and public health. He's currently the head of Public Health Institute and Research at the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa. This is in Ethiopia. And Dr. Tajuddin also is the head of the Healthcare Preparation and Countermeasures section of Africa's CCD COVID-19. Now, Doctor, please, what I would like to ask you is, what are the challenges of vaccine development and the strategy that we need for Africa? What are the perception that people have, and what are the challenges that Africa has as a whole? Professor Aguale has kindly told us about the Nigerian perspective, but I would like you to answer the same question from the African perspective. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and let me congratulate the organizers of this important webinar. I understand I have just 7 minutes to quickly share my reflection. So let's just take a step back and look at what is the current situation of COVID-19 on the continent today. At the peak of the first wave, we were having around 18,000 cases or so per day. Today, we're having around 30,000 per day. So there's no doubt about it. We are in the second wave. Officially, we are there. And we know that one of the critical interventions that will bring us out of this COVID-19 pandemic is to have a safe and a very effective vaccine. And in this regard, Africa CDC has put together a continental strategy, development and access strategy for COVID-19 vaccine. And this strategy is underpinned by 3 main pillars, and I want colleagues who have been canvassing that there is no need for us as Nigeria to go and procure vaccine that we should manufacture. We should understand that manufacturing is not the first thing when it comes to vaccine. Today, I can't see Nigeria being part of either the phase 2 or phase 3 of any of the already approved trial. So we cannot jump into manufacturing. So I think we need to get that clear. Now, so let me go back to the strategy. The first pillar on that strategy emphasized the need for Africa to be part of the vaccine development agenda, meaning that we need to be part of the clinical trial, especially the late phase clinical trial, phase 2, phase 3. And in this regard, Africa CDC has mapped a lot of trial sites on the continent, And today we are glad to say that quite a lot of our member states are part and parcel of some of these ongoing clinical trials, especially the phase 2 and phase 3. The second thing on the pillar is how do we ensure access to this vaccine? 1, by way of manufacturing, and 2, by way of mobilizing enough financial resources to get adequate dosages that will cover 60% at the least of our population. And the last but not the least is how do we remove barrier in terms of delivery and uptake. So these are the 3 main pillars under the strategy. So again, the strategy is there on the Africa CDC website, so colleagues can have access to that. So now going back to your question, Dr. Aguale, I think we all know that one of the main challenges as far as the continent is concerned and with regards to vaccine manufacturing specifically is the fact that we tend to be reactive rather than being proactive. It's only when the pandemic strikes, then that's when we start running up and down. So when we look at this vaccine that we're talking about as far as Nigeria is concerned, I would like us to approach it, 1, in the short term. What do we need to do? You cannot start a manufacturing plant today and tomorrow you begin to manufacture vaccine. Don't forget that the pandemic is ongoing. So what do we need to do in the short term? In the short term, there is no two way about it. We just need to find a way of procuring. And thank God to our leadership on the continent under the presidency of South Africa. We have some couple of member states that have that capacity to produce. For instance, South Africa, Senegal, Egypt, and Morocco. And I believe that once we begin to produce some of this vaccine on the continent, it will surely bring down the price. And we should also not forget that we have the Africa Continental Free Trade area that is also working to secure these IP assets for some of our manufacturing plants on the continent. So by the time we begin to produce on the continent, we should be able to reduce this price. In fact, the current negotiation is to make sure that whatever vaccine that is coming to the continent, we are going to get it at cost, and a lot of financial resources have been mobilized. So time will not permit me to go into the details, but World Bank is on board, Afrexim Bank is on board, Africa Development Bank is on board, and we are also working with the COVAX facility, what is coming through WHO. But we should not forget that it's only 20% of what we need that is coming from WHO. So meaning that as Africans, we need to look inward on how do we address the 40 to 50% gap, And what is also coming from WHO, mind you, is not free. We are also going to pay certain amount of money in there, So that's that on the strategy. On the perception, we did a survey last year, that's August to December, just in preparation for the vaccine rollout. We need to know what is perceived risk and perceived benefit of vaccine as far as the population is concerned on the continent. So let me just narrow down on Nigeria. In Nigeria, about 76% of the respondents were actually ready to take this vaccine. However, two-thirds have concern by way in terms of safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine. You know, of course, this is driven by past experience. We talk about Kano, you know, it's also driven by the fact that people believe that the speed with which this vaccine was produced is unprecedented. You know, so these are some of the concerns and a lot of misinformation going on. In fact, close to 70% of Nigerians also believe that the threat that is posed by COVID-19 is actually exaggerated. So meaning that we need to step up our communication strategy, especially risk communication. We need what I describe as whole of society approach, which perfectly fits into what the pastor and the imam has said. We need to carry these community leaders along so that at the end of the day, we have everybody on board. So to conclude, I would like to say that as a continent of 1.3 billion people, we cannot entrust our health security in the hands of Europeans and Americans. So I believe we need to step up our local manufacturing capacity. Thank you, and over.
Fantastic. That was really good. 76% of people will take the vaccine. That's a really high number, but she said about the mistrust and everything. So thank you so much. We're running out of time. I would like to invite, because I want Dr. Hadiza to also read some of the questions from the chat, but one of the things that came up from the Ustaz talk was about side effects. So we're going to invite Professor Olayinka just to talk briefly for about a minute about the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Thank you. So just to mention a few things about side effects from what we have from literature and from the trials that have been conducted. I think I'll talk mainly about the Moderna and the Pfizer, which are the ones that we have significant information on. The side effects are similar to what occur in many other vaccines. Things like a slight fever on the day you have it, or a day after you've had it, tingling sensations, slight pain, probably a feeling of not feeling very well, which a number of people who have taken the vaccine said they could take paracetamol from. But let me also say here that even though the vaccine is being given, it is still being monitored because there's what we call a post-marketing monitoring of vaccines. So a lot of things, the people taking the vaccines are being monitored. And bringing this home, I hope that as Africans, based on what Tajudeen said, as Africans are considering taking the vaccine, these monitoring mechanisms are going to be put in place to follow up those who might eventually take the vaccine. But then I'll just also say here that we may not know all the side effects that may occur from the vaccine. Anything that is foreign will potentially have an adverse reaction. But what we've had so far, we do not have very severe side effects. There have been a number of unusual cases. There have been videos on social media. Recently, there's this thing about the very elderly who took the vaccine, who died, and they're now trying to relate, well, did they die because of the vaccine, or did they die because they had other comorbidities, old age, and other things, which actually caused them to die. But like I said, there's still a lot of monitoring going on, and we do not know fully the extent of the side effects of the vaccine. Over.
Thank you very much, Professor Olayinka. That was very helpful. I'm now going to introduce two of my colleagues, Dr. Hadiza Gachi and Dr. Ali Waziri. Dr. Hadiza is a consultant in the UK, and Dr. Waziri is a hematology consultant in Nigeria. They are going to help us go through the chats to pick out, and the chat has been very active. So to pick out some of the questions that you've posted. So we'll do that because I can see the time is going, we'll do that for maybe another 5 minutes, and then we'll give you a chance to also go on the live mic before we come back to me for a quick summary of our day. Thank you very much. Hadiza, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hadiza. There are so many questions. I'm not sure we'll be able to get through them in 5 minutes. One of the questions that has been asked is, has a cost-benefit analysis been done regarding the vaccine? Because as many people have mentioned, there are so many other problems in Nigeria. Is there actually any benefit in doing getting people to be vaccinated in Nigeria? So I would like to ask Dr. Raji, please, to answer this question.
No, not yet. But we're currently working with UNDP and United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, so that as soon as we get a clear picture of when we are going to get the first set of vaccines on the continent, so the cost-benefit analysis will also kick in concurrently. Over. Okay,
thank you. And yeah, I don't know if Dr. Jibril is still online.
Yes.
So Dr. Jibril, we know that there are so many variants coming. We've got the Brazilian variant, we've got the South African variant, and we've got the UK variant, and there might be other variants around. Do you think the vaccines that we have now will be effective against those variants that we have?
Okay. Basically, one good thing with RNA vaccine, just like the seasonal flu vaccine, the technology is quite easy. It's a matter of removing that fragment of DNA and replacing it with a new one. But even before then, from the recent information that is being collected, the variant we see, there seems to still be sensitive to the two vaccines that are currently available based on virucidal effect of the antibody that were actually produced in the vaccinated individual. Even in the circumstances whereby the new mutant is actually resistant, it's quite easy. The way we change our seasonal flu vaccines yearly almost, or every 5 or so years, you just remove that fragment of DNA and insert the mutant form. Over.
Okay, thank you. And so I'd like to ask Professor Olayinka. Professor Olayinka, people are asking if those that have allergies or autoimmune conditions can have the vaccine.
Okay, so we don't have that information yet, but those are some things that need to be considered. Just like I said, there are issues of, some people have had some reactions. We are not sure whether it's caused by the vaccine or not, or they had other things incubating at that period. So in terms of autoimmune disorders, especially with the mRNA vaccine, it might be something to look at. But the strategy that is being used for vaccination now might be helpful because there are criteria being used to decide on who is being vaccinated and who isn't being vaccinated. And even as much as the vaccine is being offered, it's an offer. People can refuse based on what they think is their comorbidity, and they can have discussions regarding this. But there's not much information on autoimmune disorders.
Okay. So there's a question for our religious leaders. We'll start with Pastor Famojiro, and then we'll go to Ustad Abdullah. One of the questions is, how would you encourage people in your community to take up the vaccine? So Pastor Famojiro.
Right. With regards to the people in my community, when they have all the required information from the source that they trust, I believe it will help them to take an informed decision with regards to the vaccination. They will need to have, right now we're asking questions. So the questions they have must be met. So what I would say is that for the people in my community, ask all the relevant questions. When you are satisfied, then we can go to the next level. And that is the next engagement regarding vaccination. It is important that we fight this pandemic. It is very true. With faith, with wisdom, there must be balance. But the community must be carried along. Information, not assumption, not information manipulation will be helpful. And then we'll share with them what they need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ustaz Abdullah?
Yeah, I think just to re-echo what Pastor has said, with relevant information, answers to questions that people entertain for or against the COVID vaccine. Once the answers are there and people are comfortable with the answers, I think it will be easier to convince them to go for the vaccination after, you know, the known side effects have been outlined, the questions, all the conspiracy theories. You can't clear all the conspiracy theories, but you can at least reduce the number of conspiracy theories that are, you know, informing their decisions. So once we're able to clear that and there is that trust, then it becomes easy because we already have the religious basis for vaccination. So it becomes easier to convince people to go for it, even if you don't make it compulsory on them, but you can convince them at least for the general benefit of the nation.
Okay. There is a question specifically for you, Ustaz. While you were speaking earlier, you mentioned that it's not compulsory for people to have the vaccine, although you would encourage them to have it. So one of the audience members asked that in a situation where a country demands that a person has to be vaccinated before they enter that country, say for instance, when people are going for Hajj, the Saudi government would require them to be vaccinated. What advice would you give people in that situation?
Well, the advice is you have to do it unless you change your mind not to go into their countries. They have their visa conditions which must be met. So if it's part of the condition that you have to take a vaccination against COVID-19, then as a Muslim, if it's important for you to be in that country, then you take the vaccination in that situation. There are more stringent conditions before getting visas to certain countries, and people still accept those conditions. So for this, in that situation, it becomes something that is the decision still lies on the person that is traveling, whether he wants to continue with his intended journey or he wants to abandon it. But if he has to continue, and Islamically, the Sharia does not frown at the conditions that people place. The countries, nations have different conditions. As long as those conditions do not contravene the basic principles of the Sharia, then a Muslim is to abide by those conditions of the countries that he is going to. So the best advice I would give is that for such a person, you have to look at the importance of what you're going out there to do, and whether it is more important for you to not take the vaccination and be in your country, or it's more important for you to, when you weigh it and you now arrive at a conclusion that it's important for you to go, then it's equally important for you because we have a ruling in the Sharia, whatever cannot be achieved without something, if it is an obligation for you to achieve something, then whatever is going to lead you to attend it becomes an obligation also. So in that situation, if you have to go there to perform Hajj and they say you have to take your vaccination, then in that situation, it becomes part and parcel of the requirement which a Muslim should go out should go ahead and take, unless it is clear that there are non-effects to it. Now,
thank you, Ustaz. I wonder if Honorable Kakale is still there. I've got a question for him. Would you have a locally made vaccine? If a vaccine is made in Nigeria, would you choose to have that rather than
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Definitely. Let me tell you, all the policies and the act or laws of the current federal government, and of course, the Nigerian government over there, has been to promote local content. There's the Federal Vaccine Production Lab in Yaba. Nigerians should be asking. It used to be producing vaccines before. What is happening now? We need that lab and many other research institutes activated.
Okay.
Yes.
So the second question is, how would you, in your position, help to get those labs working?
You know, as a legislator, you know, we appropriate budgets to institutions, and which for the current 2021 budget, we have done a lot to empower those institutions, particular research institutions. And there are issues of oversight. I knew specifically we had multiple meetings in trying to revamp the components of NAFDAC and the Yaba lab. There's one Olubimi Ojo on this platform that even says she was a former member of the defunct Yaba lab for vaccine. We will stand to make sure that that lab and many others come on board. And Nigeria should lead an African alliance to produce our own vaccines. But for vaccines, be sure about it. The National Assembly will support local production of vaccines by the many acts and laws that we have passed. Local content laws, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Finance Bill or the Finance Act, and of course, even the executive order signed by the President, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, particularly, you know, Executive Order 1, 2, and Order 5. They are all talking about local scientific and technological support to innovation and creativity in pharmaceutical and medical research and development. So we will definitely work towards having our own vaccines so the Nigerians can have confidence and trust in the system. Because currently, people might not take those vaccines when they come in. Mr. Tajuddin said they did a poll where they have 74%. Who are the 74%? I'm not sure that story is correct. If he goes down to the grassroots, he won't get any 74% of the population saying they'll take a vaccine that they are not sure about. I'm telling you, maybe it's just a small group of well, we need to see the data, his sample size and his criteria of who voted for 74%. I know my constituents, many Nigerians, will prefer a locally and homegrown developed vaccines than the one brought in that they don't know about.
Thank you, Honorable. Dr. Aguale?
We're running out of time a bit.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll post the questions now. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Hadiza, maybe because there's lots of questions in the chat. So why don't you pick maybe one more from the chat and then.
Yes, okay. So, well, this is an appropriate question for Honorable Kakale. People are asking about how the government will support the universities to be carrying out research. Would you be able to answer that?
Yes, you know, like this economic sustainability plan, economics 2.2 trillion, and the health component of it has a lot of things concerning research, with funding and many other strategic policies that will run over the improvement and development of medical and pharmaceutical capacity and manufacturing in Nigeria. And even the laws that we have passed, the resolutions, hundreds of them in the National Assembly, is about supporting the medical sector and the health sector from production of PPEs. Imagine we have to import, you know, personal protective equipment, you know, masks, gloves, syringes, you know, even the hand sanitizers. We can't continue like this. So the health budget for this year has seen some incremental rise in funding, and there's a lot chunk of it that's going for support. We need to do more. It's not enough. It's no way enough. Health must be given the priority it deserves, because there is no sector that have shown persistent and consistent threat to national security and development of this nation, like health. Health disasters have been so too many and have always brought the on its economy.
Can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
So we are currently undergoing a sweeping health reform of the entire health system in the country to make it more productive and see health as an economic sector that is inalienably, connected to the development of this country in areas of healthcare financing, service delivery, human resources for health, health research, and health information, and even leadership and governance. Nigeria will be able to lead with the massive number of health professionals that we have across all cadre. And the population that we have, 200 million, unless we're able to tackle these problems ourselves, will be in very big trouble because of the large number of people that we have in this country. So many people in one country, just around 928,000 square kilometers, we will continue to have epidemics because of our concentration. And there's if there's one nation on Africa that should lead in the process of research and advancement in healthcare as a factor of human development, it should be Nigeria. We have the resources, we have the manpower, and we also have the young population to do it.
That's a fantastic place to end it. Honorable Kakali, thank you so much for that. Now, there are lots of questions in the chat. We're really grateful. Dr. Gachi, thank you very much for reading some of them out. I'm really sorry that we cannot go through all of them, but we will just take 2 minutes to give 2 people an opportunity to come to the mic. Dr. Gumi will unmute them to say what they have to say. It could be someone who has put a question in the chat and we have not read it out.
Good evening, the panelists. I just want to say that it's been a wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's been a wonderful session, and I just want to thank all the presenters. They've done very well in terms of really giving us an insight into what the vaccines are and what we should expect. But my concern is that we've been inundated by a number of claims and counterclaims by countries that they've found the vaccine for COVID-19. We've had the Russian vaccine. Turkey just came out with another saying that they've discovered a vaccine and they've started administering. So my concern is, which among all the vaccines are we looking out for that can give us what we expect? Are we only limiting ourselves to the Pfizer and the other ones from the West, like the US and the UK, and ignoring all the other countries that like China and Russia and all the others that have said that they've discovered the vaccine? Thank you so much.
So should we give that question to Dr. Aguale, Dr. Sadia?
Yes.
Okay. Aguale, please, if you can respond to that question.
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. Before I answer that question, I want to address what the Honorable said. He's a great guy. I'm happy that we have somebody like that in the House of Assembly. But we need to know that funding research institutions. So if you want to develop a vaccine, once you have a vaccine that is developed, how do you manufacture it? So if you look at what is happening globally, manufacturing of vaccine is done by the private sector completely. The AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, they're all private companies that can license technologies from the universities like AstraZeneca working with Oxford University to make this vaccine available to the world. So funding those research institutions is critical to develop the vaccine, but the manufacturing should be done by the private sector. So we have to look at critically if we want to make this thing happen, to fund the private sector as well. Like what the last speaker said, the key thing doing this is that you should know that if you have a vaccine has gone through phase 3 clinical trials, licensed by the regulatory authority, it is good to go. because like I said in my earlier presentation, all the safety data, the effectiveness of the vaccines, the side effects, and all of that are taken care of during the clinical trials before approval is given for the vaccine to be licensed. Like we said, only one vaccine is licensed now for emergency use by WHO, which is the Pfizer. All countries in Africa depend on WHO for guidance on the selection of the vaccine to be used. So only one vaccine, which is the Pfizer vaccine now, is approved by WHO for emergency use. WHO team is currently in China now inspecting their facility, which is part of the process for approval of a vaccine to be used. So as it is now, we have to go with, because you don't have the expertise to independently carry out those studies. So you have to depend on WHO guidelines. So WHO has said, we have approved Pfizer for use. And then these other companies, we are working with them. They're in China now, inspecting the facilities that are being used, to manufacture the vaccines and so on. So right now, we have limited opportunities. Only Pfizer is approved. How many doses of vaccines can Pfizer make in a year? That is why before we see any vaccine in Nigeria, and based on the current trend, it probably will be around April or May, except 2-3 more company products are approved by WHO. Then we'll have additional doses to begin to cover our population.
Thank you, Professor. That was well answered. Now ask Dr. Sadia to unmute one more person, maybe a woman.
Yes, I've got Olubumi Ojo. If you can just answer, that would be great.
Thank you very much. Mine will probably not be a question directly, but a comment. Actually, as the last speaker has responded, I need to say something. The problem we have also has to do with research. If government is serious about supporting research, that would be fantastic. Because we also need to know the genesis of what led to the closure of Federal Vaccine Production Laboratory in Yaba. That was where I started my career some 37 years ago. I'm now retired. Now, one of the problems was the fact that when approval was given to improve on some structures, approval does not necessarily mean release. And there is what is known as good manufacturing practices, which must be in place. That is part of what WHO normally inspects. If those things are not right, no amount of vaccines you produce from that place that will be approved. Then another thing has to do with this research, because part of what killed it was the fact that, yes, in the old world, the yellow fever vaccine being produced in Yaba had the best potency result. There was a research, highly potent, but the problem was there was no research incorporated into the production for the years of production. Basically, the thermostability was nil. So if you expose the vaccine in Yaba to 37 degrees centigrade for 24 hours, after which the potency drops drastically. So there is need to make sure that there is a collaboration between research and production itself. And if we are starting production, it should not be directly under the government interference.
Thank you.
Like you said, the private sector needs to be supported to do this for us to be able to move forward in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very useful comments. Thank you, Ma. So I'm sorry that we've run out of time, but there's so many questions, lots of people putting their hands up that they want to speak, which means we have to come back again and do this. So that will be a date for another time, but thank you so much. Now I would like to call on Dr. Balogun, who's a public health specialist in Nigeria, to summarize for us what we have done today. So
Okay, thank you very much for asking me to do this. So this evening we have listened to a powerful panel of medical experts public health officials, religious leaders, and a medical doctor turned lawmaker, my friend Kakali, who have all passionately shared informative and insightful perspectives. And they have confirmed to us that Nigeria and Africa are indeed in a second and much bigger wave of the pandemic, which calls for stricter adherence to preventive measures. Well, we have also been taken through the basic immunology of vaccines and vaccine production. We now know that all the vaccines being made are based on stimulating the body to make antibodies that attack the spike protein of the coronavirus, which is essential for viral entry into our body cells, thereby preventing infection. We have been assured that vaccine making is not rocket science. Nigeria and Africa have the intellectual capacity and resources needed to make it happen. There is an African vaccines manufacturing initiative focusing on this, and we've been reminded that governments have a critical role, a major role to play in facilitating this. Our lawmaker has assured us that there are government policy instruments and funding to support local scientific and technological innovation. It is clear that vaccine manufacturing is the way to go, medium to long term. However, on the short term, we need to first procure a good proportion of the vaccines needed. The African Union, through the Africa CDC, has a strategy to support its member countries to achieve this. Of course, my friend, the legislator, expressed strong opinions against purchasing vaccines, given the exorbitant cost of importation, logistics, waste management, and training. We have been reminded that, yes, effective vaccines have been licensed for use, but they do not immediately do away with the need to continue to adhere to preventive measures like hand hygiene, physical distancing, and use of face masks. In any case, it will take a while before enough vaccines are available for all Nigerians. And so we have to capitalize on those very simple means of preventing and controlling the outbreak. The case has also been made that a formal cost-benefit analysis needs to be conducted before embarking fully on the mass procurement and administration of the vaccines, and we've been assured that there is a plan for this. It's also clear that a lot still needs to be done to address the concerns, the fears, the suspicions regarding the COVID-19 pandemic itself, as well as the planned mass vaccination campaign. It's very important to deal with these barriers to proper risk perception, and of course, barriers to vaccine administration. So there is a huge trust gap which needs to be bridged. The role of mass influencers like religious leaders is critical in this regard. A lot of people listen to them. If they are convinced, they understand what the authorities are planning to do, they can help to disseminate this information to people who are going to receive the vaccines. Finally, it is clear that we need to be more proactive and aspire to self-reliance regarding the supplies and products needed to protect the health of Nigerians and Africans and ensure health security. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very, very well put. I want to thank God for helping us have a successful webinar. You have been an amazing audience. My panelists, we thank you so much. And everybody that's been involved, we are very grateful. I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Sadiya Gumi, who will conclude the meeting for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a real pleasure listening to everybody today. I would like to thank my colleagues that are in the COVID Nigerian Medic Steering Group that have really helped to pull all this together. A big thank you to Dr. Hadiza, our very able moderator, and Dr. Balogun, Dr. Hadiza Gachi, Dr. Ali Wazir, and a big, big thank you also to all our panelists today. It's been a real pleasure. And for those that want a recording of this meeting, they can go to our YouTube channel. They would see our previous webinars also. And all the questions that have been raised, we will try and see if we can answer some of these questions. Just follow the YouTube channel. So our next webinar is going to be on the 28th of February, 2021. And we're going to be talking about primary healthcare system in Nigeria, the role of family physician. So yeah, just follow us on our YouTube channel. And yes, if there's any updates, you would get that. Thank you.